Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure, and one of the great pleasures of being the president is to select invited speakers. The Storz Lecture is an annual event and really a lecture about technology. As we look about and select the speakers that have impacted surgical technology and have the potential to impact surgical technology, especially in the areas where we're interested in, it's certainly a pleasure for me to select someone who's made an impact on our field, and I think will continue to do so. On the other hand, the speaker probably doesn't need much of an introduction, as not only has he been a past president of SAGES, or is currently a past president of SAGES, he's been an innovator and a leader and continues to do that. There's many other editorial and teaching responsibilities, both here in the United States and throughout the world. In addition to that, he's been a friend of mine and a mentor and a leader and a real inspiration. I think that his discussion today will continue to lead us down the path of innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Lee Swanstrom.
Thank you very much, Scott. That's very kind, and a wonderful honor to be invited to be the Storz Lecturer for many reasons, one of which is that Storz is a fantastic company and a fantastic set of individuals, whether it was Karl Storz Sr., Jr., or of course Dr. Madam Storz. I have to relate a small anecdote here. When I was a young SAGES member and thought of this FLS idea, I had no money to proceed with it, and Barbara Bursey suggested, why don't you go ask Mrs. Storz? She likes education, she likes surgical education. So I very timidly went and asked for an audience with Mrs. Storz, and I have to say she's the most gracious, warm person there. She's a little bit intimidating when you first approach her, but she was great. She gave us the seed money for Nat Soper and I to start developing the FLS project, and you know where that went. So really a lot of appreciation for Storz, and it's a great honor to give a lecture named after Storz. To thank my SAGES family, all of you. It's been a warm home for me. This is my 23rd consecutive SAGES meeting. So it's been a long, long road. It's amazing as I look around at my colleagues that were there in 1990, 1991. Somehow they all got old. I'm not sure what happened there, but we all grew up together, and it's fun to meet once a year, and it's a wonderful thing. And once again, thanks to President Melvin for asking me to give this lecture. I have to also thank my surgical partners, because they really float me as I do these academic things, as I travel, as I lecture, as I indulge in innovation. It's really my partners that allow me to do that. They're back home taking care of things, or they're here, there, and I love them dearly. If they're in France, if they're in Portland, as many of you know, I now spend half time at the University of Strasbourg with Jacques Marescot, and it's been wonderful. But they're great people, and I love working with them. And I want to thank my trainees, because they're really, really important to me, all of our residents, our fellows. I feel like that's my true legacy, is going to be sending them out. It's great to see so many of them here at SAGES, and every year get together with them, see what they're doing, and live vicariously in their successes. And of course my wife Barbara, who unfortunately can't be here, but she sends her regard to all of her friends in SAGES as well, and wishes you well. So Scott asked me to talk about innovation, and I think that's appropriate. I think I'm probably an innovative personality type. And that shouldn't sound like I'm tooting my own horn or something, because as I'm going to discuss a little bit, being an innovator isn't always a good thing. And innovation is almost always good as long as it's well managed. And that's really the theme of what I'm going to talk about. So yes, I'm an innovator, and here's my disclosure slide. I'm very proud to have been involved with industry throughout my career. It's been an important part of what I do, both from keeping my interest in surgery and focus of my research efforts in technology assessment, innovation design, and evaluation. And these companies have been great to work with. I really enjoy working with industry, and will hopefully continue to do that for the rest of my career. So it's also my list of disclosures. We're all cautious about conflict of interest And that's another aspect of innovation that I think we have to be mindful of, and I'll discuss that a little bit as well. You'll notice something about my talk. It's not going to be all about science, and I'm not going to give you a catalog of innovative things that have been introduced in surgery. I would like to refer you to a couple of very good papers, one by Tom Crummell, a SAGES member, was published in 2006, which is a fantastic historical catalog of the innovative surgical technologies that have been introduced, and another one by Heidi Nelson, another SAGES member, that came out just a couple months ago, once again talking about important surgical innovations that have been introduced into our field. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to give you a catalog of innovative things I was involved in or things that happened in the history of surgery. I'm going to talk about the process of innovation. I'm going to talk about the spirit of the innovator and the process of innovation and why that's important to societies like SAGES, why that's important to surgery in general, and why that's important to our society, in fact. And I'm going to also relate it to art. In my spare time, I like to paint. I love fine arts. And so, because it gets kind of boring to look at word slides and surgical gizmos, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit about art, because creativity, innovation doesn't just happen in the sciences. It's a human aspect of human nature. And I think it's almost more apparent in the arts. Great innovative artists, great creative artists are really cultural paradigms for us all and well known to all. So sprinkled out throughout my talk, I'm going to refer to art and give you a little bit of an art history lesson. I'm sure many of you don't need it, but if you don't, you can ignore them. So in the arts, we typically call innovation creativity. In the sciences, we tend to call it innovation, and certainly in surgery, we call it innovation. So I'm going to kind of divide my talk into three different segments. The first one is exactly what is innovation, what qualifies for innovation in the field of surgery. Second part, who is the surgical innovator, good and bad? How should we handle him? How often do we encounter a surgical innovator? And what really inspires them? What makes them go? And what is their importance to surgical societies and to society in general? And what is the current and future state of surgical innovation? The latter, of course, is going to be my conjectures about where innovation as a whole is going, because I think we're in a troubled time for innovation, and actually a dire time. And I'm hoping I'll inspire you and SAGES to invest some time and effort into preserving a spirit of innovation within our society, because I believe that without that, surgery could actually die and go away. And of course, our friend Rembrandt here, and this is the anatomy lesson by Dr. Taft. So what is innovation? I think it's a little bit different than creativity. And the difference is that innovation implies an action. You can be creative, you can have creative thoughts, but unless you act on them, unless you put them into action, unless you make them happen, unless you have that drive, you're really not going to change things. So innovation is doing new things, not just thinking of them. And I throw in a Claude Monet. This is actually very important in the painting, in the history of painting. It's called Impression of a Morning. And this is the birth of Impressionism, which at the time in the late 1800s was extremely radical and very controversial, and got these guys thrown out of their equivalent of meetings right and left. But they applied their science, they did it, they went ahead and did it, and now we all love Impressionism. Innovation in surgery has two basic forms. I want to define that, and this comes from a great presidential address by my friend David Ratner, who gave one of the best presidential addresses in the last decade on innovation. And he defined incremental innovation and disruptive innovation. Actually, he clarified that for it and translated this well-known definition into surgical terminology. And I think these are important concepts. And what's really important for surgery, I believe, is disruptive innovation, because this is a double-edged sword. Disruptive innovation can push us forward at breakneck speed, but it can also put us out of business. And he defined that quite well. I reproduced a chart that he has here, and you can see how as you operate, if you don't change, you'll quickly get out of the realm of functionality for society. You'll outprice yourself, or you'll become old-fashioned, or whatever, so you get out of bounds. And then innovation happens, a disruptive innovation happens, and it kicks a new thing there that's better than you are. Does it a better way, it's better for people, or whatever. And then after a while that gets old and a new innovation comes, et cetera, et cetera. And I just put an example for that as open heart valves. Pretty soon we had minimally invasive heart valves, and that quickly disrupted open heart valves, outpriced them, better for patients, everybody wanted them. And now we've got percutaneous heart valves, and all of a sudden nobody wants the thoracoscopic heart valve. So these disruptions are extremely important. As long as the surgeons are involved in that disruption, as long as they're at the forefront of that disruption, they'll keep doing these things. If they're not at the forefront of that, then it goes off to somebody else who is. And it's easy to see how you can progressively lose control of your practice, your métier. So the danger to surgery and innovation is that we'll be too slow and conservative in innovating. We won't be fast enough. We won't introduce our own disruptive innovations. And that can make our procedures obsolete. Could potentially make every procedure that we do obsolete. Tissue engineering may fix hernias someday. Genetic screening may eliminate cancers eventually, many of the cancers we operate on. So it's extremely important that we be involved in this. You know, the trend is not good for general surgery. The population-adjusted number of cases that surgeons do has been going down for the last several decades. Surgeries are disappearing right and left. They're being replaced by interventional radiology techniques and other techniques. I think one of the most relevant examples of that for SAGES is what endoscopy has done to actual operative surgeries. You look at this list of common procedures when I first went into practice, everyday cases that we did, and these have all essentially disappeared, replaced by endoscopic procedures. That's why it's so great to see SAGES embracing flexible endoscopy and revitalizing that and leaning on the surgical establishment to make our residents learn flexible endoscopy. That will help us cling to these procedures. Surgeons should do ERCP. They should take care of the common bile duct. And these innovations just don't stop because they're better for people. So I want to transition a little bit to the innovator, who the innovator is, and what motivates them, how they work, and some of the bad things about being an innovator. So most surgeons want to take good care of their patients. They want to have a nice career. They want to take good care of their patients. They want to do their job and do it well. And that's great. And that's certainly nothing wrong with that. This is a beautiful painting from the Italian Renaissance showing physicians treating patients as they have done since time immemorial. But there's a small percentage of surgeons who have always questioned everything that they're told. And if you train residents, you train fellows, you're familiar with these people, they stand out like sore thumbs. I know I was one, real pain in the butt. And they've been driven to question everything that they've been taught or everything. They're the revolutionaries, as you can see from this famous Delacroix painting of the French Revolution. Sociologically, I got to do a little bit of research about this as I try to pinpoint who these people were, how you identify them, where they come from. And in all walks of life, in all careers, in all types of endeavors, 1% to 4% of people are defined with this personality trait that you could call innovative, which is an almost pathologic questioning of the established way, an internal need to change things, to make them better, to some extent. And the dark side of this, and I'll talk more about this, to some extent, they're willing to step on toes to get there. We know that in the field of painting, cultural innovations done by these charming iconoclasts, these bohemians. We like them. They're pleasant. We like to hear about Salvador Dali and his wacky escapades, and Pablo Picasso and his 5 wives. We consider these kind of harmless eccentricities when they're an artist. It's a little bit different when they're in surgeons. So this is a sociologic study. There's 5 social psychologists classify personality types into 5 groups, and they call these the Big 5. And they also identify innovation and innovators as a very important group of individuals in society. And they define 2 different types of creative individuals: adapters and innovators. Adapters are nice people, conscientious, but not real open to radically new experiences, whereas innovators are a little bit more aggressive, sometimes maybe abrasive, outgoing, extroverted, and very open to new experiences. In fact, they seek out new experiences. Interestingly enough, both score low on rule governance. What does that mean? Well, I think Thomas Edison, I think we'd all admit, is an innovator. And this is, I think, a very telling quote for Thomas Edison. Mr. Edison, please tell me what laboratory rules you want me to observe. There ain't no rules around here. We're trying to accomplish something. So classic innovator psychological profile. And I think this can be charming, it can be contrariness. Greatest pleasure in life is doing what people say you can't do or shouldn't do. And you can see how that can be a positive motivator for people to push science, push the frontier there. And these kind of people are considered to be heroes and heroic effort, and that's all well and good. But there is a dark side to this as well, this kind of inability to follow rules, this drive to do things differently. And I want to just talk briefly about the dark side of the innovator's soul. This is from William Blake's, who was a real visionary English artist who saw visions, saw angels in the trees, and saw devils and angels in everybody's personality, and wrote a lot of poetry and essays about the dual nature of humankind. Surgery is a difficult field for an innovator. Why is that? Surgeons have a grave responsibility for a patient's life. They not only have that, they have sole responsibility. When you're standing there in the operating room, I'm sure all of you have had the feeling of terror that this life was now your responsibility, that this choice that you're going to make, this life and death choice, was going to have to be made. And I think that makes most surgeons very conservative. I mean, that is a force against innovation, especially when it comes to introducing new things into the operating room, new things onto their patients. So there's definitely a conflict there between wanting to push the boundaries and wanting to do that appropriate good job for the patients. I think because of that, innovators often tread a razor's edge when it comes to the ethical considerations of surgery. And I know inside of myself, I have to always think about that. I have to pull back. I have to think about, yeah, this is cool, this is good, this is really neat. I want to do it. Is it in my patient's best interest? And I think all of us know individuals in our society, leaders, innovators. I had to resist putting this talk together about naming names here, but we know who they are, who get in trouble sometimes to kind of cross that boundary and get slapped around a bit. I think by nature, innovation, not only can they cross ethical realms, but they can get slapped around a bit just because the establishment gets ruffled a little bit. And often they're not the most socially adept people expressing their need to innovate. They can't express it real well, so they can get in trouble. One name I will mention is Eric Muhe. I know you all know him. He's been brought up at SAGES meeting in the past. German surgeon, really the first one to do at least single site, we'd say now, cholecystectomy, but kind of the grandfather of lap chole, if you will. And innovative guy besides that, bicyclist, but he designed an anti-DVT exercise machine made out of bicycle parts, and just a real innovator and a nice guy. I met him a long time ago, and just the most pleasant guy, but a little bit socially retarded. And he got in big trouble with the German establishment, surgical establishment, and was essentially hounded out of practice. This guy was driven out of practice because of his innovations, and eventually was almost made a broken man. His wife left him, he lost his practice, he lost his life savings, and it was only very, very late in his career. You can see he died relatively young. It was very late in his career that he got any recognition for the pioneering work he did, and really that innovation spirit was not considered a positive attribute. Back to the social psychology of all this. This is kind of the definition from sociologists about the dark side of the innovator's spirit. Strong relationship, and this is kind of psycho-speak, but openness to experience, a good thing, and both aspects of innovation, and between agreeableness and openness to receiving inputs from others on innovation, but no relationship between consciousness of others and innovation. So this is kind of a scientific analysis of the personality profile of the innovator. You can see the danger in that. This is actually a study looking at those who resisted innovation, those who didn't want any part of it. Once again, you see this 1 to 4% incidence of innovators in the population. This wasn't specifically about surgeons, of course. 1 to 4% of adopters, innovators, are more likely to be social deviants, abnormal in their epistemic drive, and adopt innovations indiscriminately rather than based on any rational choice calculus. Why should we understand and emulate their behavior? I think you can see in the art world that can be quite harmless. You either like the art or you don't. You can walk it out of the museum if you're really offended by it, although people can become quite emotional about that as well. But in the medical profession, this can be a big problem. And this is another quote, Edmund Burke, the great philosopher and economist. Spirit of innovation is generally a result of selfish temper and confined views. People will not look forward to posterity who never look backward to their ancestors. So all's not fantastic with innovation, particularly when it boils down to the individual. On the other hand, it's the heartbeat, the drive of society and of surgical societies and society in general. I'll give you one more name example. This is, of course, the great surgeon Charles Gross, famous painting by Thomas Eakins, who was very innovative as well and had a very tragic career. I won't go into it. Fantastic painting. This was at Jefferson University for years, kind of in this back hallway, and is now in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Incredible painting. On the other hand, if you really cone down and you focus, and so surgeons see this, and obviously it hung in Jefferson for ages. They're very proud of it, very proud of Gross and everything he did. On the other hand, this painting was very controversial and was rejected by society because if you cone down on this, you see this rather arrogant-looking man with a bloody knife, and this woman is the patient's mother, cowering in abject terror, and obviously he could care less about that. And for that reason, this painting was not allowed to be shown in public for decades, and was eventually relegated to kind of a dark back hallway in Jefferson. So there's definitely a dark side to it, and I'll come back around to that a little bit more, how we deal with that, how a surgical society like SAGES should deal with it, how individuals should deal with it. On the other hand, I think eccentrics should be tolerated and encouraged, some of that are really the spice of life, and John Stuart Mill, that so few now dare to be eccentric mark the chief danger of a time. I think that's true for society like SAGES. Imagine all the innovators went away, all the creative thinking. This would be a pretty hollow society. So I think surgery needs to cherish and support these visionaries. They give us drive. Sometimes they do it at tremendous personal cost, certainly with internal conflicts. I think as a group, as their partners, as their friends. We need to help them protect them from themselves and protect patients. I know my partners often say, "You sure you want to do that? Maybe you should go to the lab first." So I think that's important. We don't want to end up cutting our ears off or having tragic early ends to these innovators. So I want to, for the third part, talk a little bit about what I perceive as the dire state of innovation, particularly in North America, in the United States in particular. We know the current situation with medical care worldwide. Cost is out of control. Everybody's looking at us as the budget breakers, if you will. And to be perfectly honest, it's a big problem. Medicine in the United States in 2 to 5 years is going to be 20% of the GNP. I mean, that's a lot of money. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of that money wasn't very wisely spent in the past, and a lot of it's still not being very wisely spent. Unfortunately, I think technology, innovation, new things is really getting blamed for a lot of that. And technology is identified in everything you read about this as the problem and a driver of cost, not a solver of cost. And I think that's a problem. I think a lot of that problem and a lot of the responsibility for that problem falls on our shoulders. So what I see happening, although this is certainly not the official thing, is that because of this new widespread interest and concern about the cost of care in general and the cost of technology in care, it seems like the government has put the brakes on wanting new things into the system. They say they haven't, but I think I'll show you data that would indicate that they have. The official word is that we want innovation, we want technology, it's what makes American healthcare special. A quote from Barack Obama expressly says that. Great, I love this painting by Diego Rivera. It's kind of the Mexican surrealist showing that, but it's a beautiful painting of a surgeon's hands. It was his own surgeon. And his wife was Frida Kahlo, and of course had spinal cord injury from an accident and had multiple surgeries, and he painted this painting kind of as a commemoration and gave it to his surgeon. You kind of freak out your patients in the waiting room and hang that up there. So progressively over the last decade, the number of approvals of new medical devices, if you're a minimally invasive surgeon, if you're a surgical endoscopist, that's what we live on, is these new devices come in. That pipeline has been ratcheted down. And these number of new approvals, 510K approvals, which I'm sure most of you know is kind of an expedited pathway for industry to get new devices out there, has decreased steadily up to 2010, and even PMA, pre-medical evaluations, which is the other pathway where you have to do research and you have to publish studies and you have to do animal studies and limited release, has dramatically decreased as well. So overall, the number of new things is markedly decreasing. Even more worrisome is there's a general movement to do away with the 510K process. They say revamp it, but to some degree, they'd like to do away with it. And it is a pretty antiquated thing. It allows medical device companies to compare their current device to things all the way back to 1975. And if it has a vague similarity, they can get in without all these animal studies and proof of efficacy and proof of safety. They can coattail in on these old devices. Well, 75 is a long time ago, so you can kind of see that there might be some problems there. But this is an important pathway for companies because of this. On the FDA website, how long does it take to get a new device approved for use in humans? They say 3 months. In actuality, it takes 31 months through a 510K process. And you compare that in Europe where I work as well to get a CE mark, kind of the equivalent of FDA approval, 7 months. So big difference there. Obvious breaks going on. with that, and have data that shows that they do it the same way our hospital administrators do it. They send, oh, you forgot to sign on this line, and they send it back, send it back, send it back, sometimes as many 7 times, asking for additional information or whatever before they let it through. It's even worse with the PMA process, which is a much more involved process. On the FDA web page, it says 9 months to get your thing through a PMA. It'll only take you 9 months. In actuality, it's almost 6 years to get through a PMA process. Once again, in Europe, you know, it's 20% of that. You can see why American device companies are fleeing the United States and going in droves to Europe. It's even worse when you look at how much those 2 processes cost. This is mind-boggling for surgeons who come up with an idea and take it to industry, and they look kind of vaguely concerned about it. 510K process takes on average $24 million to get something through 510K. PMA is 4 times that, almost $1 billion to get a device through PMA these days. Startup companies simply can't do that. They're priced out of the market. This is a big, big, big problem. Because of that, investors are fleeing the field, the medical technology, the med tech, our device development field in droves. 70% decrease in funding over the last 5 years, and it's not because of the economy. Those guys are sitting on billions of dollars that they need to invest. It's just that process of getting it through regulation has become so onerous, so expensive, and it continues to plummet, even though the economy is on the rebound. Just over the last year, down 37%. New medical device company startups are the lowest in 15 years. And we add on top of that, we add this device tax, which fortunately looks like it'll probably be repealed, but technically went into effect in January. And you look at the impact of that. Look at the impact of that on industry, but if you look at what that's going to do to society, this is an analysis of what the effect on the U.S. economy would be of implementing this device tax and driving more companies out of the thing. You look at that billion personal income, value-added income, industrial output, this thing will lose money by imposing a tax. For every tax dollar they get in, they're going to lose $1.6 if they impose this tax. Of course, it was an estimate, but probably not a thing. Great Milan Kundera is a great Czech author, novelist. He wrote this: business has only 2 functions, marketing and innovation. If you take away innovation from business, you take away half of what business is about. All they have, and it won't even have anything to market, come to that as well. So, you know, it's a critical time, and I think it's something for SAGES to strongly consider, a legislative committee to consider, is getting behind our industry partners and really trying to help out with this. I like this quote by Alexis de Tocqueville: "I cannot help fearing that men may reach a point where they simply give up on this process. They look on every new theory as a danger, every innovation as a toilsome trouble, every social advance as a first step towards revolution, and they refuse to move at all. Stand still." Innovation is important. It's what pushes us forward. We got to do it. I do think we can help. I think our current approach to innovation on a whole is flawed. And I do think surgeons need to, at least for the time being, until things change, until the economy turns around, be a participant in this and use innovation to help solve this problem. I think we need to get away from gadget innovation. We're gadget freaks, and we spend a lot of time, we push industry, give us a new gadget, give us a new gadget. And I think that's a flawed thing. I think we need to move beyond pure technology-based thing and go to, this is a great Ara Darzi, who we all know, who's been a speaker at this same lectureship in the past, recently published this on an online publication I found. A key to slower healthcare spending growth worldwide be unlocking innovation to reduce the labor intensity of care. I think there's a new field of innovation that we as surgeons haven't really even thought about, that we could focus our innovative energies, and that will help us actually get out of this. This is just some ideas that appealed to me when I read that Darzi paper. We could innovate devices and ways of improving training and the transfer of knowledge and make it smoother and have fewer complications in the learning curve, etc. We could innovate to improve operating room efficiency so it's more cost effective. We can create ways of making less waste in our hospitals and save money that way. I think the future of surgery is getting patients out of the hospital. They're obviously dangerous places and expensive to run, and innovation should focus on a goal like that. Move the patient out of the hospital. Make surgery so unpainful that patients can go home like they had a colonoscopy at least the next day or the same day. Fusion therapies, borrow, synergy, take things from interventional radiology, take things from flexible endoscopy, take things from medicine, and make surgery more efficient, more exciting, more innovative, and don't get purchased out of the process. And I think most importantly, reducing the impact of operations on people. As you guys know, notes was important to me. I was interested in notes, but it wasn't because I wanted to take gallbladders out of people's vaginas or anything like that. It's because I wanted to do a surgery that didn't hurt at all, that didn't have Band-Aids, it wasn't subjected to a need for a sterile environment where the patient could go back to work the next day. That's why I like notes. That's why I liked about the outcome. I can't tell you how happy I am to see all the talks at SAGES on POEM, where patients are going back to work after treatment of a really lifestyle impacting disease in 3 days. So minimal impact. Now, patients have no pain after that surgery. It's great. From Peter Drucker, of course, great sociologist and essayist. Innovation is a specific tool of entrepreneurs, means by which they exploit change as opportunity. Is capable of being presented as a discipline, capable of being learned, capable of being practiced. So 1%, 4% of surgeons are born with this need, this pathologic need, this somewhat dangerous need to innovate, to change things. But what Drucker's saying is that you can train people to gain that same mindset, that we can train people to be innovators and bring them up. That's something that's not built into our curriculum right now, but I think it needs to be. And one of the projects that I'm most happy about in Strasbourg, where I work now, is that we started a program last year that we call ISIP Innovations, the IHU is Strasbourg Innovations Program. And what this is where we take bright young individuals from multiple disciplines, multiple interventional disciplines, interventional radiology, flexible endoscopy, laparoscopic surgery, team them with engineers, team them with business people, put them in a classroom, give them resources, money to do experiments, and we send them out in the field to kind of look and watch together as a group, go into the operating room, go into the interventional radiology suite, and as young, bright people see how it could be done better, and take that back to the lab and create solutions to what they see as problems. And we do push them to look beyond just a new gadget kind of thing, processes, innovate in processes, innovate in efficiencies. This is obviously not novel. There's multiple institutions like this. The most famous probably is Stanford Biodesign that Tom Krummel's over 10 years ago created, which has been a tremendous idea factory. Nat Soper is involved at Northwestern, in one Purdue. There's multiple of these, but I think they're incredibly important for the future of society and for the future of surgery. So kind of to wrap all this up and try to tie it all together, innovation is the lifeblood of surgery, and organizations like SAGES need to cherish this, they need to recognize it, and you need to promote it specifically. I think surgeons need to participate in innovation actively and assume control of disruptive innovations. If you hear that bright medicine guy, if you hear that bright interventional radiologist came up with something that had some surgical implications, you should run it over there and rip it out of their hands and start doing it yourself. Because surgery is fragile, it can be totally disrupted, and it's better for patients not to have surgery. That's a tall tall stack of things against surgery, and left unbridled will be innovated right out of surgery. So you have to take control of it. You have to move into those new fields. Treat the surgical innovator kindly, kind of recognize that they're driven internally, that there's some negative aspects to it, and be kind of careful. We need to really watch out for them because they're valuable individuals. I think as a surgical society, we need to focus on a new model of innovation, get away from the expensive devices. We need to look for patient value, better outcomes, more efficiencies. Those are fun fields to innovate as well, and should be recognized that. And we need to teach the next generation of surgeons the value and ethical application of innovations. It can be applied ethically. It's extremely valuable to us, and we need to start teaching it. I think for SAGES, the achievement of excellence can only occur if the organization promotes a culture of creative dissatisfaction. SAGES is great at that. Look at the quantity last night of the thing off of counterculturalism would have get you thrown in jail in many conservative societies. So this is the place for this all to happen. I mean, it's a great, here's Paul Cézanne's a great landscape, but we're the impressionists, we're the cubists, we're the disruptors of surgical societies, and we should cherish that. And finally, I just throw this in, for everything we do, there are three approaches to moving forward. One can continue to do the same as we always have done, as others do, won't move forward. One can choose to do worse, or one can choose to try to do better. And I think we should try to do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Inspirational and excellent as we expected. The plaque for the Karl Storz Lecture is inscribed with a quote from Omar Bradley. Omar Bradley was a famous American general, soldier, and later became Chief of Joint Staff. He grew up and actually became, his early career was during World War II. So he really oversaw the birth of the nuclear age. The quote from him is, while not direct, is very similar to what we've heard. Ours is a world of nuclear giants and ethical infants. If we continue to develop our technology without wisdom or prudence, our servant may prove to be our executioner. Lee, we really appreciate your inspiring words, and thank you very much.